Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining in today's session. And once again, welcome you all to session 5 of the MPM module. So before I begin the session today, let me look at the chats there. Prakash says, good evening. All right. So how have you all been? Again, probably close to a week. We are meeting. We're catching up on every Thursdays, Saturdays. So it's last Saturday that we met. So a couple of updates that I'd like to provide. Meanwhile, you can just post good evening or status on how's your day been, everything in the chat. So a couple of things on the MPM outline, which I had provided to you, the spreadsheet, I have changed title of most of you all, in fact, except for one or two, which I was confident to say that it's good to go. So except for that, I have revamped certain title. In fact, for a few of you all who have just given me a skeptical outline, I have restructured that as well. Now, a couple of things. I did not add that on the sheet, but rather I have created a Word document for easy reference because that was an editable file that was given to you, the spreadsheet. So I was thinking if I re-edit and someone tries to, edit for themselves or trying to make any changes, it's going to go haphazard. So I've created the doc. I'll be sharing the document anyways with you. So to begin with, the title that I've reframed is what I'd like to share in the first place. So I'll definitely be sharing this document with you all, so do not be dismayed as to why it's not getting projected on the tracker. So I have noted down the ID of the learners alongside the improvised title as well. So I'm not using the word topic here, rather I'm using the word title. So which means if you're ready with your research objectives in question, which I'm going to discuss up next after your title. So we'll begin with the title now. So I've reworked all this in the sequential way, and some of the titles per se, I have marked them as red in color. If you see some of them, I've just marked red. And furthermore, people who've used case study. So time and again, I've been stating that case study cannot be a part of your primary research, which is, again, a requisite from the university perspective. So please ensure not to add case study. So two of you all had case study. In fact, I've highlighted those who have mentioned case study, and I have just, pretty reworked on that. So I just want to take a few minutes for now to explain to you how this is re-reflected. And from here on, you have to work or rework on your objectives and research questions. In fact, the spreadsheet, again, I'm going to screen share it with you. So I've not reframed the title there because that's an editable spreadsheet. So I'll be sending across this file, which is only going to be in view access to you all. So ideally, you can copy the title and keep it for your reference. And with this particular title, I want you to rework on your objectives, research questions, and the gap, so on and so forth. The gap, any which ways, it's going to be the same. Once you do the literature review, you're going to get a better understanding on what exactly is a research gap. But it all begins with the title. So title is where the structure as well begins with. So a couple of things. In fact, as per your spreadsheet, I have taken in the lineup only for those people who have given me the title. The rest of you all who have given me partial title as well, I have structured a complete title. People whose rows are blank totally, unless you give me at least a piece of your idea, I cannot structure anything. So there are certain people who are just given challenges. Let's say, like, I saw a couple of them just trying to put forth as challenges, okay, in their title, but then I have tried to reframe that as well. So I'm just going to pick up. Yeah. So Miriam's title was this old title. Malik's old title was this. So beneath that, I have given the actual title. So Didier, so your title, I'm going to fix on this. One quick run through. I'm not going to read your titles because I'm going to share this document with you all with only the view access and not the edit access. And based on this, you're going to restructure your objectives and research questions. Again, in that spreadsheet, I'm going to put it as new or reframed spreadsheet. So I want you to work on that. And depending on your redirect objectives and research questions, I'm going to suggest the other alignment as well. So Didier can kickstart with your operation with this title. In fact, geography is covered, industry is covered, and for your information, I want to just highlight on this because your original title as well had SME. Okay, so whenever you put forth your title, just not Didier, anyone for that matter, please ensure you expand the acronyms, at least in the title. And also, let's say when you draft your introduction, or when you, again, draft your literature, once at least you'll have to say SME, what it is, and then you can give an acronym throughout the document as SME only. Okay, so I don't want people to just give acronyms in your title. So I just wanted to flag that or use it as an example for others as well. So no acronyms in the title. So just change that. And other things I have revamped. So you can stick with this, Didier. And Madhi, I have again revamped a little your sector and the locality is put forth. So you're good to go. So wherever I've not read, those people, please ensure that you change. Okay. And I'm going to share the document. So Malik, you had provided me with only this particular aspect as a title, but then I have revamped it. And this is your new title there. And Miriam as well, I have revamped it. This was your old title, which said challenges. For others, Mariana had provided case study because I recall all your titles. So Mariana's old title was on case studies. So Mariana just changed it, and please stick to this and you're good to go with this title. And Malik as well, please use this title, which I've revamped. Miriam, use the title I've revamped. And marvelous. Slight changes here. Okay. So you just changed your title there. And Michael, I think by and large, out of all the documents, I was pretty impressed with this gentleman's work. Michael's work was, at least to the best of my knowledge, I didn't have to put much effort on changing either the title or objectives or the question. So the moment I read that one row, I understood, okay, this person would carry forward with good research acumen. At least the subject knowledge is pretty wise with Michael. That is something I really liked the way it was articulated pertaining to Michael David Morgan. And then Michael Jordan, I've slightly changed the title again. So this is good to go now. And Ajmal, Mohammed Ajmal. So you have provided initiative in improving, the point was quality higher education under financial constraints. Okay, so I have tried to squeeze in strategic and institution initiatives. The reason is, see, somewhere we need to include the element of business management. If not, it looks too much like an MEd or MAD student doing a dissertation. So which is why slightly revamped on it. You can just stick to that. And okay, Giannis, impact of AI-driven transformation. Again, UAE is a highlight there. So you can go ahead. And Mustafa, market penetration strategy for sports construction sector in Saudi. So you as well can go ahead. So I'm quickly going to pull in. Okay. Marvelous on chat, so I can still use the same. Yes. Yes, Marvelous. You can still use the same. Your category comes under the course transfer. Yeah. But try to replace with this title. I mean, it is still slightly realigned, although you people have done the work already. It's slightly realigned. So just copy paste this title, which I'm going to provide, which is on the document. That'll suffice, but the study is still the same. It doesn't affect your work. And Monzer, impact of digital transformation. Again, this is, I've revamped most of them. In fact, probably except for Michael, which I didn't put much of effort. And the rest of you all, whoever is on screen, is completely little reworked because it needs to tailor make the requisite of the university as well. And Nina, again, your piece of work. And Nicole, your work as well. So GCC, Numan, you're stating GCC. This I wanted to ask in the class, but how well are you going to get the input from the entire GCC? Because when you say GCC, it's a wider reach that you're going to get into as your respondents. So how are you going to justify that? Barring that, I have
I
changed. Yeah, Numan.
can I say something? So I can make for KSA as well. The reason is that my
That
company is
will
like,
be great.
yeah, yeah. So
That
they
will
can,
be great.
yeah. Okay, I can do that
Okay.
KSA. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm changing that here as well. That will be brilliant. So Saudi would at least hold good. So KSA, I've substituted and good to go. Please expand, okay? Kingdom
Yeah.
of Saudi Arabia, just try to expand that because acronyms they wouldn't agree. Okay. And
Mm.
Omar Ahmed, if you're in class, there is no title on the sheet. So at least had you given me a statement, I could have reworked or looked from a wider scope on what can fit into the 6 month study. So, Omar, I've not received anything on your title as such. And Sama, nothing from your side as well. So please ensure you fill in the title so that your work starts navigating from here. And Peter, developing nuclear talent in newcomers nation, quite a bit of social science topic. Peter, I want you to pick something from the perspective of, I mean, at least talent acquisition. Maybe think on this aspect from another perspective, because when it comes to nuclear talent, newcomers nation, there's no touch of business management to it. We see humanities and social science background learners picking up topic like this. For them, this would be a wonderful fit per se, but for business management, something on talent acquisition, at least we can relate that to human resource management. So I'm just going to look forward for your input on this particular aspect. So something, if you really need to stick to talent acquisition would be my suggestion. But on the topic, you slightly need to revamp because it's on the basis of humanities and social science here. So please do revisit this a little, and I'll help you from there on how to go about it, or I can suggest you better. And also, I need the geography of this particular study which you're going to undertake as well. So clarity on this too was missing when I, went through your document. And Prakash, I think we spoke about Prakash's topic. So I suppose in last class we were discussing. So I'm going to just give it. In fact, he's opted for one emirate. So that simplifies his work much more in narrowed down research. Prishan, again, this post-COVID, we have moved way past pandemic. But you're trying to look into a study of branded clothing purchase in Mauritius. Um, Slightly, I want you to revisit because of only this aspect. See, even when the university people are going to review, we have an external examiner who's going to review. So the person is just going to ask, it's been 5 to 6 years, over this, or at least on an average 4 to 5 years. So why this is still stuck to a researcher to work on this aspect. So I'm going to highlight this. And for now, I'm not proceeding. If you need further suggestions, at least on branded clothing and social media advertising, I can suggest a good topic for you because these two things are viable. We can look into different perspective using these two variables, and probably we have to eliminate the pandemic. Are you in class, Prashant? Okay. I don't see a response. All right. Ram, again, no title, so I cannot move further with your revamp or giving much input. And Richard, again, Richard's topic was fine, so I'm just gonna prove that as well.
Thank you, doctor.
Raham, yeah, Raham's topic as well, proving. So certain topics have included, excuse me, have included variables which can help you in your objectives and research questions. So please check on those. Sadid, I don't see geography here. So unless I get a geography, I'm not going to move further. So I just want Sadid, if you're in class, to just pay attention. So I need geography to be included in your study. Safira as well, there's no topic, so I cannot move ahead with the title. So now I'm going to accrue this and Syed, again, yes. The female, I've revamped certain aspects here. And Thomas, Thomas, did
Hi,
you check
Professor.
on, yeah. Hello, good evening.
Sorry if I'm interrupting. Um,
It's okay. Yeah, go ahead. Only thing I can't see
s-
the name because I'm screen sharing the entire document.
yes.
May I know who this is?
The theme. This is the theme.
Okay, it's the theme. All right, the
Yes.
theme. Tell
Uh,
me.
so due to certain changes that are going to occur in the next 2 months, it may result in me changing the industry. So
Okay.
there is some process undergoing currently. So
Mm-hmm.
in order to stay relevant with the
Mm-hmm.
requirements, I may have to change the industry
All right,
in the
not
title.
an issue. So give me a heads up, probably about the industry. You can probably let me know on Saturday or Monday, and we can get this aligned for you. Not an
Is
issue.
it all right if I can update you through like an email or something? So
Yeah, that'll be better. Absolutely. That'll be fantastic. Okay.
thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. This for my reference. I've just highlighted red. So thanks, Tiffany. Thomas, if you're in class, I just wanted ethical consideration on this aspect. If that is good to go, we'll stick. If not, we're just getting this out from the title. Okay? So just a heads up on that. I'm just going to keep this topic on hold. Thorsif, I'll move ahead with Thorsif. And yeah, Estefanos, it's again one emirate. So I'm going to go ahead. Umeru Bab, again, I'm going to go ahead. Subtle topic, It's quite cliche, subtle topic, but what matters in your study, Ume, is going to be from UA, the respondents. That would vary. And Osama, no title. Venetia, I have revamped it, and I'm going to finalize this. And while case study, we cannot pick case study. So this is your old topic. So I'm not going to pick this, rather, because of the element of case study. I'm literally not going to pick that. Rather, we're going to go with enhancing operational efficiency. So I'm just going to pick with the second option here. Okay, so you would have to dominantly pick the second here. Yeah, enhancing operational efficiency. So pick it that way. One thing I wanted to ask, the geography. So if you're in the class, you can just unmute your microphone while as geography is missing. I really want you to highlight on this factor. Okay. And the rest is going to be what I've reworked. And Abdul, so Abdul's topic as well. Excuse me. This will align. And one thing I wanted to share. Okay, so 36 learners, out of which here and there we have a spillover of no title provided. So all these green color code, you can go ahead with your objectives and also your research question, which means technically you're going to change that particular aspect in your tracker that I provided. So that's the first thing you need to do. And barring that, I also have another point to say. The learners who are literally working on your document, that's well and good. But I have another piece of work. Who's raised hand? Yes, Thomas. Is that regarding ethical clearance? Could you speak? Or you posted on okay, it's not pretty clear from your side. Okay, so your audio is still vague. Could you post in chat? Your audio is too vague. I mean, either your network is poor or your voice is breaking. So it sounds like a bot. So you can post it on chat. Maybe the audio network, some issue would persist. Yeah, that's what they say. Your mic is not working properly. The theme is posted and it's too muffled. Yeah, you post on chat. Need to find out the comment you made. Okay, yes. I want you to find out on the ethical clearance perspective if the corporation or the company is okay to project their name, we can go ahead. If not, we just stick with the industry and particular geography and wrap it up there. Okay, so let's not explicitly mention there. Yeah, no, you were trying to talk about the respondents. The other day we had a chat, right? You had mentioned a corporation, the company which you are working in. So there's no clarity on that, the sector industry. Mumtaz has also raised hand. 1 minute. Thomas, you can draft an email to me. Okay. So you can just draft an email to me. Okay, have you, if I read your chat correct, are you asking, I'm talking about the Kitwe City? No, I'm talking about the respondents and the corporation. Who are going to be your respondents in your study? who are going to be the respondents in your study? Is it centric to an organization? So I just want a clarity on that. Is it going to be centric to an organization? Okay, the business community. So you're going to pick a snowball or a probability sampling, like randomly you're going to pick from business community, irrespective of CEO, senior manager. Is that how you're going to pick the study? He probably is chatting. Let's see, he's just typing there. Meanwhile, I'll pick the question from Mumtaz. Yes,
Hi, ma'am. Can you
Mumtaz.
hear me?
Okay, yeah, Sadat, tell me.
Ma'am, I just want to know, like, when you said me to select a geography, but in manufacturing management, if I choose a geography, it will be like narrative to a small area. Then I will not have a.
Yeah,
So if I go for a bigger, broader, wider area, then only I can target to get more narrative research to get the research going on. Should I like stick to a brand like a target area like manufacturing engineering management, manufacturing engineering, so I can target all the group?
yeah. So your target have to narrow it down in some or the other way. The thing why we insist on geographies again, we have to narrow down more for a master's study. See, had you been doing a doctorate, I wouldn't have a concern because the duration of the time is more. So your study will not have skewness of data. In this case, when you're picking, wider, a larger perspective of people, then there is a challenge
Yes,
because your respondents may not be equally distributed for us to get the sample as in reflective to the analysis. So you may just get two people from one particular sector or a locality. When your wider reach gets in, there's a lot of dilution in your data collection, and your output will be generalized. You can conclude to say a concrete response.
yeah,
So
ma'am.
your data collection will be skewed, which is why we say at least a sector is still fine or a geography is still fine so that your response is not skewed or scattered.
Correct.
So
So, ma'am,
that's where
the doubt
we
is like
insist.
if I choose the industry as manufacturing, so if I go
Mm,
with the narrative of one country or geography, I couldn't have to do a proper research on UAE. For example, if I take UAE, I don't think that it's a
mm,
developing country to do a AI research on UAE. If I go for
mm.
KSA or another country, I don't think it will be viable to go and do the research. So if I choose an industry which is manufacturing engineering, so I would have a great idea to go back and forth to get what are the developing and developing country to do a comparison with both and give a solid conclusion. So if I narrative with manufacturing engineering, which is going to be a specific target group of industry, is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
So, ma'am,
But
in
from
that
where we're going
case,
to pick the respondents for that
yeah.
particular industry?
So in that case, should I change my topic or is it okay?
Likely you'll have to refine. Just
Okay.
send me an email on what is your perspective, even if it's on industry, we can work on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
probably we can just put the existing title on the pause.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Sadat. All right. Thomas, it's clear. If it's business owners, it's clear. But again, business owners, is it from a prescribed company? Or are you going to pick random sampling? The business owners, you mean to say the board of directors or the founders, co-founders, that way. So because respondents, very particularly, we need to look into the respondents as well, which I'm going to explain in today's session about the methodology. So Thomas, you can post on chat. If not, you can send an email to me. I'm going to explain to you how you can choose the respondents, and then reflective of your title, we can just work on slightly. If not, as long as it's city, that's absolutely fine. I'm just looking on the respondents of your study. From which particular target are you trying to take the respondents there? Barring that, I think we're good with it. And someone said um, your topic was posted and it was not evident on my document. Okay, yeah, it's Farouk there. Not sure if my name is missed, but okay. Yeah, Farouk. Maybe I would have read it, so we can look into it. I'm going to share the document just in case if you do not find your name still, you can send an email to me. And there is one work which I have completed on research question. I mean, everything is included for this particular learner. That's the last name that is part of my spreadsheet.
Yes,
Allow me
ma'am.
to share the
I
screen.
see it.
Okay, yeah, it's the last name that I had reworked completely your entire row just to show people how it needs to be. Okay, it's Nadira. It's you.
Yes.
Oh,
But
so you were the
transfer
one who's
from City
chatting.
Malaysia. That's why.
Oh, okay, okay. So Nadira, I've just reworked on just Nadira's title completely. Again, code 19, Nadira, probably we have to re-reflect. I know there's a transfer from CU, but slightly here will re-reflect. Okay, so which is why I just picked your topic there. Problem statement, see if this aligns with your existing work. The gap, aim, again, objectives, 3 objectives, and 3 research questions. So for only for this particular learner, the entire row, I had just revamped it. And for the rest of you all, I have changed the title. So I'll be sharing the document and I want you to work on your research questions, objectives, aim, gap, problem statement. Once for all, problem statement will reflect the same. Your gap, again, depends on your literature review. Aim, some of you all are clear, some of you all are still struggling, but eventually when you start structuring your proposal, you'll get there. But pertaining to your objectives and questions, please try to revisit it based on your title. Because sometimes the variables in the title and in the objectives and questions may not match, which is incorrect. So all the 3 needs to have the correlation. So just work on that aspect. So apart from that, we're good with it. And Osama. Okay, so Osama is posted here. All right, Osama will be getting back on your work. So now I'll just move on with the class. And those of you all who would like to suggest the title and you've not suggested, so please try to do that via email and I'll help you out. Meanwhile, the rest of you all, I'll be sharing the document. So people who have highlighted in green are good to go. So start analyzing your objectives and questions based on this particular title as well. So the rest of you all, whomever I've highlighted red font, so please revisit or let me know the area of interest so that I can help you on structuring your work appropriately. And now I'm going to commence with very major element, like the pattern of your dissertation depends upon 5 chapters. So the first chapter is introduction, which we did it in LO1, inclusive of your title, objective, research question, research aim, gaps, problem statement, and for the scope of study, what can you look into? So we're reflecting on these things in your introduction, LO1. That's going to be part of your introduction chapter in your dissertation. The second element, that is the second chapter in your dissertation, is pertaining to literature review. So what happens is in literature review, we just saw the processes of literature review, how articles need to be reviewed. We had a prototype on which the strategy on keywords, search engine, Boolean operators, using Google Scholar and other things were run through. We looked into citation and Harvard referencing style. So technically, your literature review has to be solid for you to even identify the research gap. So that's pretty important. And now The third chapter is what we're going to reflect on, your dissertation, that is research methodology. So the entire crux of your work starts from research methodology as an independent researcher. So until 1 and 2, the first and the second chapter, you still will find humongous information to cover the content of your dissertation, although you need to analytically get in a few variables and your thought process. Apart from the knowledge aspect, you still have the secondary sources around you to collate and get a lot of things on plate for first 2 chapters. But then for the third chapter, you have to start wiring from a researcher perspective, and it's highly important on reflecting on the methodology of your research. Now, today's session, and including Satya's session, I'm going to help you identify how we can get into this research methodology. In fact, after research methodology, it's going to be data analysis. And once your methodology is fulfilled, there is an ethical clearance form, which is part of your module kit. So you may have to get your supervisor's signature, that is on ethical clearance for your data collection once you finish this third chapter. So methodology actually gives you an overview on the research design in itself. It's just like how to construct a house or an infrastructure which you'd like to build into needs a blueprint. Likewise, the research design and the methodology is going to serve as a blueprint for your work ahead. So for which we'll be using a lot of terminologies as well, which is going to help us in structure this methodology as well. So that's what I'm going to reflect in the Learning Outcome 3 as well in today's Saturday session, precisely on Sanders' research onion. So we're going to peel the onion layer by layer to understand what is the methodology we're going to use, what is the strategy, research strategy we're going to use, what is the research approach that as a researcher you're going to use, what is the time horizon that you're going to use, and what is the technique, the sampling technique, which is technically asking Thomas on who your respondents are going to be. So your sampling techniques as well needs to come into the picture. So we're getting into the crux of the research from the perspective of a blueprint, which is what we call as research design. So methodology is going to be your third chapter, research methodology. And in line with that is what we're going to deal in today's session. So for your proposal, it's mandatory that you need to peel the Sanders research onion and give us a structure on your approach, your philosophy, your design, your technique, and your time horizon. These 5 factors is what we're going to reflect. But before that, let's try and understand what is formulating the research design all about. Now, in the first place, I'm going to begin with a reflection, and then we can talk about what exactly is research design. So I'm giving a scenario here. Let's start from your very own life, because research is something which out of the blue, I cannot start and say that, okay, we're going to pick it from here, which is why I'm going to handhold you from the title, and we are collectively working on the title and other stuffs here. So first, we'll reflect from our lifestyle perspective, and then move on to the examples and the title that you've created on the research design as well. So first of all, I want you to pick any one of the question here, which you can at later point of time reflect and then answer as well. So what you're going to do is your day-to-day life, right? It could be anything which is part of your day-to-day life. So here I've just brought in for examples on coffee habit, exercise, study time. Few of y'all will be fitness freaks. Few of y'all will have a very conscious diet, you're health conscious, and your diet is consciously chosen, you'll meal prep. So probably that could be part of your routine. And few of you all may budget some time to read or go through the newspaper, or you can, read the book before hitting your bed. So you may have certain habits, which is part of your routine lifestyle. Okay. So for you to get into that habit, let's say on your day-to-day life is what activity you need to pick, like the coffee breaks you take, or drinking coffee is vital for you. You cannot eliminate this. Something as part of your routine in a day. This is something which you religiously stick to. Okay, so you're going to pick that activity. And based on that, we're going to start designing how to research that particular element. Now, if it is coffee habits per se, and you want to study on how, just like you, there are people probably around your locality or in your office or among your peers or among your family members, how many of them have this coffee habit, like drinking coffee in a day or in multiple intervals, something of that sort. So pick a routine in a day which religiously you're doing, and you want to study this element with others. And it could be anyone, others could be anyone. So what I want you to reflect is these aspects. Okay. So first of all, you're going to tell me if your piece of work on routine is going to be a qualitative or quantitative data collection. Second, you're going to tell me. So some of y'all may know this, some may not know this, but give it a try. Out of these given options, is what you need to pick and choose your design. This very basic design. I'm not getting into the steps. The ideology of running this activity is for me to understand what you get a hang of these terminologies: primary, secondary, qualitative, quantitative, cross-sectional, longitudinal. Okay, so I want you to just reflect on these aspects. Any routine in a day which is religiously followed by you, and imagine you have to study this with anyone, peers, colleagues, family members, or people from different country. You want to, keenly know about it. So what could be your design? How would you design your study to get this routine of your own lifestyle in the form of research? So in that case, what categories among these are going to be your favorite pick for designing your research? Is it qualitative, quantitative, primary, secondary, cross-sectional, longitudinal? If you don't know the terms, it's okay. But if you can still try, at least telling, yeah, I would like to interview these many people, so I'd like to pick qualitative, something of that sort. But there should be relevance of at least these 3 points. Which pattern of your lifestyle would you like to study? And who are going to be your respondents? How are you going to collect the data? And what sort of data are you going to look into? And cross-sectional, longitudinal, which is part of your study, definitely. That's going to be the time horizon. All right. So I've got the first response from Nikki. Daily life, work-life balance, qualitative, primary study, cross-sectional. Perfect. I think, in fact, very well defined, appropriate connection I can see. Qualitative is an inductive approach. Primary data collection, obviously, it's going to be primary data collection, which correctly Nikki's identified. You can still go ahead with secondary, but it wouldn't subside to the raw aspect of your primary data collection. And cross-sectional, yes. Longitudinal cannot be, because longitudinal are the time horizons for the research, which is for a longer period of time. It's generally going to be more than a year. So for doctoral studies and all, the postdoc studies and all, observation experiments, that they create for a longer period of time. But cross-sectional is what is appropriate for master's level of study. So I just got one response. Daily life, that is work-life balance, which Nikki feels I'd like to study. It's going to be qualitative. So qualitative is technically inductive study, which is interview. So qualitative aspect is picked there. And cross-sectional is correct. Any other thing which you want to study, what would you connect? Anything on quantitative? Can someone try? What sort of your habitual practice on a daily basis can have a quantitative study? Anything on quantitative? Yes, Sophie.
So if we can take, for example, the same example of Nikki, the work-life balance, and if we take a quantitative method, then that would require taking a survey from my family, for example, for their
Okay.
observation.
Survey, you want to take?
If,
All right. All right.
yeah,
Survey from your
and
family
yeah,
members.
so the work-life balance, and what's their observation on this? And for the current year, it's not so good. So, yeah,
Okay.
is that
Oh,
correct?
great.
The
Yes. Survey holds good. Nice. And family members, yes, of course, probably you can create a Google form and questionnaire can be distributed. Holds good. It is correct. Yeah, thank you. And of course, it falls into the category of primary study again. And cross-sectional is going to be standard response. You can blindly close your eyes, put in your Sunday's research engine as cross-sectional, because your level of study fits into a cross-sectional. Because the duration of the time as well, we don't have an option for longitudinal study, even if you wish to. So cross-sectional by default gets the answer correct. So Richard, daily life, setting daily priorities. Okay, how do you prioritize your activities in a day? Richard wants to study that. Quantitative, primary, okay, nice. And Manisha, eating healthy. Okay, so conscious there on eating healthy. Probably she want to pick on quantitative. Yeah, it's still possible. And cross-sectional. So it's going to be primary again. All right, so that's a good hang of it. Now, slightly we are getting into business perspective. Okay, a company wants to launch a new product. They need to know if people will buy it. Okay, so sampling, who would be part of the sample? Who would you ask about the product preference? So I want you to let me know who are going to be your respondents in the first place. So sampling here and data collection, I'm going to use survey, interview, or focus groups because it's about company wanting to launch new product and you need to know if people will buy it, right? So how are you going to collect the data? Survey, questionnaire, interview, face-to-face, or nowadays even you can do online meetings and you can transcribe the script or focus groups. And analysis, do you want to do trend, preference, or correlation? And purpose, again, the research design. So research design you can eliminate for now. I don't want to take it too technical. Just let me know the sampling and how would you collect the data and what sort of analysis would you get into? This is a new product launch. All right, I get a response from Michael. Consumer in this specific product market. Okay, so it's going to be consumers from the specific product market survey, because you can include a wider set of consumers. Again, so survey is preferable. Trend. Okay, you're going to do a trend analysis. All right, neat. And Manisha, sampling employees. Okay, you want to pick employees. Probably you're testing on the very own employees of the company to see how their products are. What if to please people, they say it's really good? If to please their immediate managers or, yeah, Manisha.
Good evening, ma'am. Yes, definitely. I think that if the company can do a pilot launch within the organization itself, so to have the pros and cons, how the the target audience will accept the new product. So the sampling will be the
You want to do
employee.
a pilot study. Okay,
Yes.
nice. So a pilot study
Thank
within
you.
the organization to begin with. All right. So she just muted the microphone. All right. Thanks, Venetia. And did your structured online survey adults? Oh, that's nice. Age, preference of age is being given here with a variance of 18 to 65. The theme, sampling, targeted segment, data collection survey. Okay, you need focus groups as well. And analysis, trend, preferences. All right. So it's given two options, more than like two would fit in there. And form is retailers in the respective market. So retailers also you're trying to pick it up. So a wider perspective could be consumers per se, and others. I mean, a retailer can also be a consumer. Okay, so that is also accepted. And Giannis sampling different age group and conduct survey interview with target group. Okay, you're looking at the interview with the target group. So probably focus groups, interviews will work. So that's a clarity. Focus group and interview, I'll pick that combo. And survey can go to a larger extent, but for a focus group interview, I'm picking that combo. That can fit well. And Nikki, sampling need to know who the target market is for the product. Assume it's young professional. Based on that, we would sample customers between age X and Y. Customer sample will then be focus groups and survey. Okay, so focus groups is still fine. You know, if you're picking and choosing a preferable age group or eating habits of people on looking at the particular new product, unless or otherwise, you know, it gets into the health and other preferences, or if it's gadgets and other things, you can choose people of that age group, so on and so forth. Thank you, Nikki, for that. All right, so now getting to the point, what exactly is formulating the research design? So we're going to get there in the first place, and how to go about it is what I'm trying to reflect as well. I just wanted to see how you're going to respond to those two questions. Probably once when explanation is done, the way you look into your own work will matter the most, because on your own title, objectives and questions is what your methodology is going to be framed. Precisely your research questions is going to help you to frame the methodology as well. So first of all, research design. Like I mentioned earlier, now research design is something that we keep in as a blueprint to structure our study further as well. So it's actually a strategy that we use in collecting, studying, or even evaluating the data. So a research design is very important for us to bring in up the consistency in our work in a logical way as well. So for us to create this framework in the first place, we as a researcher should start looking at the design in a much more sharper way, which is actually the methodology, which is going to be looked into in a sharper way. And we have to suit it to fix the subject matter, which we're going to discuss as part of our study as well. So the research topic in the first place will give us a lot of idea on what sort of study can be undertaken. That begins the first step as well. And then your questions, your objectives will give much more reflection on how you can go ahead with this design. So consider always your aim and approach in formulating the research design, for which your research question acts as a first step and your objectives acts as a second step in identifying what sort of methodology or theoretical framework you need to get into the study. And secondly, when you choose research design, do not give the options like if, but, or between. It doesn't work that way. You have to be concrete enough in proposing your design. When you say it's going to be a primary study, it's going to be quantitative, it's going to be deductive, it has to end there in that line. That is why we re-reflect on Sunday's research onion. You cannot have permutations and combination, but it all needs to align in a structural format. And you have to identify a population and the sampling method in your research design. It's really important. You have to determine the target population, sample size. What sort of sampling method are you choosing? We have random, stratified sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling. So what sort of sample are you going to pick? So identifying your population is really important, along with what sort of sample you're going to choose and the sample size. That is, the targeted population number is important. So the university has approved the quantitative study, which has to at least have 100 respondents. In a quantitative study, it's mandatory to pick it up, 100 respondents. And in a qualitative study, 10 to 12 people in an qualitative study as respondents are necessary. So if you're choosing interview, please pick 10 to 12 people. Minimum 10 is a must. And in a quantitative study, 100 should be a target. When you start the data, when you collect the data, when you prepare the questionnaire itself, be very well prepared to see how can I choose these many respondents. So your population, that is your target population, is necessary. Your sample size is necessary. And the requisite by the university is this. So you cannot have variations in this when you get into your dissertation. So your proposal can propose what is supposed to be the target population sample size. So choosing the sample method as well is important. And also method of data collection, like if you all mentioned survey and you're trying to mention focus group, target group, right? So choosing your data collection method, either through interview, observation you cannot do, but it's just going to be quantitative or qualitative, which I'm going to explain. And quantitative always falls under the category of survey, which again is using questionnaire, and qualitative falls into the category of interview. So these two are the only options available to you because others are beyond the scope of your study. So only these two can fit into, and it is a mono method. So you cannot do both quantitative and qualitative. You either got to pick qualitative, that is interview, or quantitative, which is survey using questionnaire. Now, we're going to look into these two terms. I think a couple of students, probably whenever I have interacted with them, they get quite a bit confused about the method and methodology as part of their study. So I'd like to give clarity on these two terminologies as well, so that this gap is fulfilled. Now, what is research method? When you look at the term method, now this talks about a specific procedure which we try to use. And I say procedure, which means it's actually a process which you need to undertake, which is why we say method, research method. So when you use the word method, it's all about you thinking on how you actually gather the information. So what method would you use to gather information? So which is where you need to narrow your scope, which means you need to focus on the actual task of data collection and analysis. It can be qualitative. Qualitative interviews non-numerical, and it can be quantitative, which is numerical through your survey. So that is method which we're talking about, which is purely chosen on the basis of your research question and objective. And then we have something called as methodology. Methodology is the strategy which we use to develop behind our research process. Now, this particular strategy, we'll try to talk about why, we'll try to talk about how you choose certain methods. So in your blueprint of research, you have to explain why those particular methodologies are suitable in answering your research question. So in methodology, you need to have a overall strategy and a rationale behind choosing your research process. Why did I choose a quantitative study? And how did I choose a quantitative study? That clarity is where your methodology comes into the picture. So the scope is broader than the method here. And I'm also explaining why I'm using this method in a certain way, which can fit my research in my methodology as a strategy as well. So that's where your theoretical foundations come into the picture on your research methodology. In fact, your research approach, data collection method, reasoning, everything fits into the methodology. And we're looking into research philosophy. Now, this is going to be the fundamental part of your study as well. In fact, in Sunday's research onion, this is one of the layer as well. So I'll walk you through the layers later, but I'll give you first an idea what these terminologies are, so that when I explain the Sunday's research onion, you will know these terminologies needs to fit in there as well. In the first place, research philosophy. Now, philosophy is basically the foundation of your research approach, which means we're talking about the set of beliefs and assumptions which are going to be part of your research. Now, whenever you start a title, most of your title, if you notice, whichever marked green, you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but somewhere you know at least 50% of your work needs to go in this direction, right? So your philosophy is going to fulfill the rest 50%, which is basically about the foundation of your research approach, which means your set of beliefs, your assumptions is going to be tested using these philosophies. So what you're going to do, three things here. Your beliefs and assumptions, you're going to test against reality in the first place, right? Your beliefs, assumptions, I'm going to test against my reality. So which is why we say in industry, get in an industry, get in a sector, get in a geography, get in at least something which is realistic. The rest of the things are your beliefs. The rest of the things are your assumptions, which still needs to be proven through your research. So I'm going to test my beliefs and assumptions in the philosophy against my reality as a first checkpoint. What exists? What is the truth? I'm going to find out that. So the ontology portion covers about this, which mostly you people don't get into, in what exists or what is a truth, that part of the element. Apart from that, we also cover knowledge, which in your case mostly is appropriate. Knowledge, how do we know something is true as part of research, right? Through knowledge sharing. Now, let's say Thomas picks business owners, 10 business owners from different companies. They're all business owners. So their knowledge as respondents is going to reveal something to Thomas as part of his study. So he will conclude to say, because of these aspects, probably if he's doing an interview, which I feel is appropriate in his topic, so he's going to come and say that, okay, these were the themes that I identified that's common with the business owners. So there is a knowledge enhancement that's happening. We call that philosophy as epistemology, right? And then we're looking at values. How do our beliefs, ethics, or bias affect our research? That's called as axiology, which we do not use in business management to a larger extent, but ethics as an aspect, we reflect on that in business management as well. So predominantly, epistemology I've seen people using. And apart from that, the aspect of research philosophy is these mainly. The first one is positivism. The positivism in research, we look into the belief about reality and knowledge in positivism, which says the reality exists objectively, it can be measured, and it can be explained using scientific methods in a positivism. So how can I get into choosing my philosophy in positivism? Let's say if someone needs to study the effect of a new teaching method on student performance. So how can I come up with a new teaching method? And how can I check the student performance? Through conducting tests, right? So I'm getting new knowledge to someone, let's say the existing set of class. And when I get a new teaching method, you as learners, you need to undertake the knowledge transfer. Now I need to test this, if this method of teaching is working. So what I do, I bring a test. So in that test, or the scores which you get through the test will help me to statistically analyze the effect of my new teaching method on the performance through your scores as well. So in such cases, I can use positivism. So in studies which the reality exists, there is objectivity in it, which can be measured or explained using methods, statistical or scientific method, positivism comes into the picture. Now, some of your studies fits into positivism because it can be measured, right? And this reality has objectivity in it. So purpose of teaching, knowledge enhancement, or someone gets in higher up in their educational degree qualification. So all these things come into the picture. So I can still measure your marks, your grades, your titles, merit, distinction. It's measurable. So for such studies, my philosophy should be positivism. And the next one is critical realism. Now, realism talks about the reality exists, but our understanding towards the reality is imperfect, which means I can study this through quantitative and qualitative aspect. I can use a mixed method for realism. So there is a reality which exists, but my understanding is imperfect. So how do I make it perfect? Is through the study. Now let's say climate change. The climate change is a debatable topic. Some set of people, we actually say the North and the South. So some set of people actually believe that climate change is real. How? Because reality exists. They say rise in temperature. Best example, even here in UAE, in Dubai, I'm not able to sustain a summer like I did last year. Rise in temperature, we're hitting 50, 51 degree on the temperature front, extreme heat, and then you get to see humidity quite often, irrespective of day and night, you find humidity. So this is something real. So some set of people feel climate change is real. The other set of people feel it's a hoax. It's something humanly created, and people are just getting this as a fad, right? So for me, reality exists, but understanding is imperfect because of these two debates. For such people, realism, critical realism study works, which means, let's say in the given example, if I need to study climate change, I have to constantly take the satellite temperature data, or I can interview people from different geography. They say, okay, the glaciers are melting. And how does it happen? Due to climate change. Some people say it's natural. It's a natural process. But why is it happening on extreme front? So a reality which exists, but the understanding is imperfect, can work on realism to get the data. And you can study it both in qualitative and quantitative way to back this existing factor. Realism, is it real? So climate change, is it real? So topics like that can fit into critical realism. And interpretivism. We have something called as interpretivism, which is where reality is subjective, which means the meaning is constructed by individuals in an interpretivism. See, the term itself says interpretation. So today, Sadid may have a reality which is subjective. Tomorrow, Nikki may come up on some of the reality, which could be subjective. So it could be Nikki's constructive mechanism, one way. And the other one could be Sadid's constructive mechanism. Probably they're dealing with the same topic, but from different perspective, different sectoral contribution. So you can explore, experience such things. Subjective in nature comes under interpretivism, right? So again, coming back to that teaching example. So whatever scores I get in the form of positivism, I try to prove using statistical analysis because it's quantitative. Your numbers, your scores are quantitative. But in interpretivism, what happens? Each one may defend to say, I may ask an XYZ person in the class, why do you score just 10 on 100? That person may have some subjective factor to say, oh, you know what, actually, I didn't prepare well. That is still okay. But some of them may say, I didn't understand. I didn't make an effort to study. I forgot that today was a test. So things like this, when it comes, it's subjective. So when you're scoring a 10 on 100, which one way we are interpreting is your knowledge is poor, your subjective defense is, I didn't study. I didn't get the topic appropriate. I totally forgot that we have a test. You're just pulling XYZ reasons there. So interpretation becomes a matter of fact, which is subjective in nature here. Just like you say, God exists. And then some of them say, no, there's no factor of God. There's no factor of good or evil. So it's interpretivism. So subjects like those come under interpretivism only. So there's no validation of data in questions like this. So people who are atheists, they're still going to be atheists. People who believe in God still are going to believe in God. So interpretivism gets into such themes of research. Then we have postmodernism. So in postmodernism, the aspect of critical philosophy, it'll challenge the idea that there is a single absolute truth only, right? And sometimes when you have a particular aspect where it only says, oh yeah, this alone is truth. You have to come up with a critical element towards it. That is where the postmodernism comes into the picture, which means whatever says there is a single absolute truth, the postmodernism will challenge the critical philosophy of it to disprove that there is a single absolute truth, which means reality is socially constructed. The knowledge is fragmented into the context. So either it is shaped by power, culture, language, that they say it is absolute truth. But they fail to understand beyond the culture, beyond the language, because a multitude of cultures, multitude of language. So postmodernism is quite dynamic, and it challenges the idea of whatever theory or constructivism it says, this is the only single absolute truth. So multiple truths can exist at the same time. Each can validate within its own context as well in a postmodernist philosophy. They don't go hunting for the truth in the research, but they explore different perspective, which means there is a question which is dominant on the narratives. And whenever you're questioning on the narratives, the hidden biasness will come into the picture. So, which is why we say we challenge the idea of single or absolute truth which exists. So, postmodernism has a few assumptions as well. There is no universal truth, which is considered to be true, depending upon whosoever narrates the context as well. So language as well, they say it shapes reality. The words, concepts that has been created, that needs to understand the philosophy of the world as well. And there is diversity of voices in postmodernism. All the perspectives, especially which is marginalized ones, they have to be considered in postmodernism. And then the last one is pragmatism. So when you're looking at a pragmatic approach in the research, again, it talks that truth is whatever works best in the context, and you can use mixed method in this. You can combine survey, interview to evaluate certain aspects as well. So pragmatism works on the basis of truth. So facts don't come much into the picture in a pragmatic approach as well. So when I peel the Sunday's research onion again, I'll be using the terms. Now this is for your understanding on how to go about it. And another aspect, since we're talking about qualitative and quantitative, in scientific research. Now, scientific research is something there we study on only systematic phenomena. We create or test knowledge that way in a scientific research. And definitely we'll have to reason on the research on how to guide. So even in your Sunday's research onion, we would be using two major factor on scientific research, which is part of your study as well. One is inductive research, which is from data to theory. Inductive research comes into the picture. So whenever you're choosing a qualitative study, it comes under the purview of an inductive research, meaning to say if you're doing an interview in a Sunday's research onion, it is inductive research, which is going to be a qualitative study. So in inductive research, it'll start with either observation and the responses from respondents. The focus starts from there. And from there, you move towards building broader generalization or theory. That is why we do a thematic analysis in a qualitative study. So you have 10 people. In Thomas' case, business owners, let's say he takes 10 interviews. Now he's going to start with accumulating all these transcription, picking themes for each question that he's asked. So he would observe. He will move towards building a broader theory or a generalization from these points. So they don't begin with a preset theory in an induction study. Instead, a researcher here would gather the data, notice the patterns, and then they create a theory to explain the output of their study. Now, these 10 business owners would have been either given 10 perspectives, or all 10 of them would have given a common perspective, which again, he as a researcher should be able to notice the patterns, pick the themes. And we have softwares like NVivo where we analyze and do a thematic analysis as well. And there is a process flow, which means there's an observation. There is a data pattern that comes through interview, which you can detect. And sometimes you can develop hypothesis, prove and disprove through the respondents, and then build a theory as well. That is much more evident in an inductive study as well. And predominantly in a deductive research, which is on the flip side, we start the study from a theory to data, which is why a quantitative study holds good for the deductive research, which means you're going to do a survey to fit in as part of your deductive study. So the deductive research starts with an existing theory or a hypothesis. Then you design the study to test whether the theory holds true in a new situation or data set. Some of them, if you see, a topic would have been studied elsewhere, but they would have a different set of respondents to see how the theory holds good. Now, what I do, the study in Saudi may not be the same, which probably I do in a part of New York. So it's going to give me a varied response, depends upon what sort of questions I'm asking there and what are my objectives in research questions. The same thing here, the same thing there with different respondents. So an existing theory, hypothesis, designs the study to test, to see whether my theory holds good, or in a new situation, the data sets, new data sets again, is it going to give me a different approach? So the process flow in a deductive, you choose a theory or you form a hypothesis, you collect the data, you test the hypothesis, you confirm and reject the theory based on the respondents. So that's important. Hypothesis is not mandatory for you people, but if you're picking it, well and good. If you remember, I had narrated that in LO1. So always have aspect of a goal as part of your inductive and deductive. If you have a goal in inductive study, you have to build a theory. In deductive study, you have to test the existing theory. And when you look into a logical direction in an inductive study, your logical direction should be specific to general, because you're bringing in a question, and when it's diluted among 10 people or 12 people as your respondents in inductive, that specification gets general. But when you do a deductive, a general logic direction gets into specific, because you have data to prove it. The data will give you the responses divergent to what your respondents have responded as well. Flexibility, you look at that element. In inductive study, more open-ended questions are asked, which is why you have a checklist of questionnaire, right? You cannot, probably you can just limit to say 10 minutes per question, but you cannot limit the thought process of an interviewee as an interviewer. So there is more open-ended question, which means there's a chance to get into exploratory research in a inductive approach. So there's a flexibility. When it comes to deductive, you're using a survey. It's very structured, and it's more structured in comparison to inductive study. So the scope of research here is limited just to those questions. So my thought process cannot explore. I stick only to that. And sometimes it goes on multiple choice or Likert scale, 5-point scale. When you give all those, like you get the survey forms, right? Most likely, and you may also get choose or rate from 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, right? So all these are structured and close-ended, which is only part of your survey, deductive. So there's no much flexibility there. And when it comes to risk aspect in inductive, the theory may not generalize well, which means the onus is upon researcher in an inductive approach as an output. Now, 10 people told me 10 answers. How am I, as a researcher, going to give the output? So the risk, that is the onus, lies on you, accountability. And you need to articulate it beautifully to say what these 10 people meant on each and every question and what is your conclusion. Did you find an answer to your gap? Did you find an answer to your research question? Has your objective been fulfilled? You will conclude it. You become the master of that piece of closure. And in a deductive, there may be confirmation bias. If the proposed theory itself is wrong, incorrect, the confirmation bias, which means your survey should be structured very well so that it doesn't deviate your objective or questions. If not, the confirmation bias, like I as a respondent may not have much knowledge as you as a researcher on the subject. I would just stick on what options I have. So your options should be well defined and grounded. If you go wrong in giving somewhere closely related or incorrect options, again, confirmation bias. So I didn't get what you're trying to put in the check boxes. Randomly, I would tick. So be very cautious when you're structuring close-ended questions in the survey. And always have this thing in mind in the Sunday's research engine as well. This is very useful. So if you're picking deductive study, what is going to be your approach, qualitative or quantitative, for a deductive study? Is it quantitative or qualitative for a deductive study? Yes, can you please answer the question? It is quantitative. That's correct. So you can never go wrong with this. This is like you should read in yourself for complete 6 months of your study. So deductive, quantitative. So major thing what he uses, survey. And then inductive, hold good for, qualitative. And again, your interview comes into the picture here. Okay, so please ensure you never go wrong with this particular aspect of your study. So always, so the given option, quantitative, you need to get 100 respondents for the survey. And for your inductive study, you have to ensure to get at least 10 to 12 respondents. This is the requisite from the university, so please do not get into any business of reducing this to 9, 7. It'll reflect on your grades. Simple as that. So keep this in mind, and we'll take a break now. I'm going to continue with the session after the break. In fact, after the break, I'm going to quickly run an activity to see how much you've grasped of this element, and then we'll continue with the rest of the aspects. So we'll just take a 15 minutes break, and then we'll get back. See you after the break. All right, I'm continuing with the session. Hope you're all glued to the laptop. Just give me a heads up. Right. Thank you. I see Tafim, Yonas, Numan, Sanav. Thank you. Thank you so much. Perfect. Almost raised hand as well. Thank you. Yeah, even Mariana's there. Perfect. Thank you all for rejoining the session. So a couple of things which I had to take forward in the activity front now. First and foremost, let's try to revisit if the concept of research approach is understood. So I've given an illustration here, and your task is to again redefine on certain aspects here. And we're just going to look into how these are redefined. So first of all, I've given an illustration which talks about a set of plants, which is actually in a greenhouse. They have started wilting, so withering technically. And your task is to figure out why. Now, as a researcher, I want you to figure out why this effect has been taking place in the plants instead of plants. Okay. Now, you need to let me know whether you're going to use an inductive or a deductive approach for this particular study. If yes, how are you going to do the study? But end of the approach, I want to know the steps that you use, either inductive or deductive study. So technically, there are a set of plants in the greenhouse which is wilting. So how can you rectify this problem? So this image is what depicts the statement. So I want you to let me know the inductive steps involved in it and deductive steps involved in it. So as a researcher, you're technically going to give me the steps for inductive and deductive, or whichever you choose is the best. You're going to let me know the approach and why this particular approach as well. Take a couple of minutes, and then you can probably start giving me a structure. So plants, they're withering, they're wilting, and you have to do a study why. So if you're picking inductive, either ways you can do. So pick only one and let me know the steps on how you're going to resolve this issue. You can take a couple of minutes to in fact, we can apply using both deductive and inductive approach, but I want you to choose one and give me the steps of the approach. You can frame a hypothesis or construct a theory. End of this, I need a solution on how you can go about in offsetting the issue. I mean, you can't let the plants die, right? So how are you going to offset this issue? Think about it. So deductive, inductive, You have to begin somewhere. Excuse me. You have to begin somewhere. What would you do in case of an deductive approach? Let's start with deductive. Let's say deductive approach. What would you do in this case? I'll just copy paste it here. Yeah. So what would you do in this case? Yes. If it's a deductive, what would you do in this case? Okay. I received a response in chat. Okay, it's a couple of responses. Nice. Didier has posted on chat. Deductive, what are most common reasons for the plants to wilt? And okay, he's identified, is it overwatering or there's no sunlight, etc. And test. You're going to poke the soil, all right, and check the leaves for spots of box, whole leaf to sunlight to see if it's thin or yellow. Okay. Do you have a nursery or a garden or plants in and around your house? I mean, he's literally got critical as a researcher. He's taken the task seriously. This is what I want. Nice. At least Didius has thought about sunlight, water, spot, bog, all those. Good. Thanks for that. And the theme, deductive approach, restate the problem, clearly define the wilting issues and scope of affected plants. You need to document which plants are affected, excuse me, where for precise diagnosis, and categorize the possible causes. Okay. Kind of generative AI content, but at least he's ensured that there is a response given. Okay. Context data, identify when, where, how the wilting started. Yeah, in fact, we need to look at the root cause and review greenhouse loads on humidity, temperature, etc. Eliminate broad causes. Systematically check water temperature, use sensor, moisture meter. Okay, quite intense. All right. You like gardening, no wonder. The way you use the term, like poke soil. I generally try to test my soil that way. I use a stick to check if the soil is wet, dry, hard, because I do have indoor plants in the home because now it's summer. So I've gotten all my plants inside. So nice. Good idea. Because your terminologies are too candid for me. So nice. And Nikki, inductive, 10 to 12 interviews conducted with across. Okay, nursery staffs. Nice. She's going ahead with interview. Inductive approach. Identify the patterns where plants grow or will they conclude as to what the best conditions are for optimal growth, recommend a way of working. All right. So that's from Nikki's side. So one by one, the chats are increasing, or probably we're taking time to prepare. I was thinking, why the silence? Nice. Jonas hypothesis formulation. Begin by forming a hypothesis about why the plants are wilting. This could be based on the existing knowledge or theories about the plant. And for example, it might be the plants are wilting due to lack of water. Okay. And experiment, observation, analysis, conclusion. You would conclude whether the general theory lack of water causes. Okay, so you've come up with the statement, that is your theory, telling it could be due to lack of water, lack of sufficient water. Okay. And Michael, we have one shot from Michael there. Inductive, it's observed that the plants are wilting, therefore, testing whether plants have water. Is it too hot? As theory says, plants will wilt if they do not get water, or if it's too hot, extreme temperature. Okay, two things is identified. And observation, inductive, that's good. And Thomas, deductive, collect data and soil condition, temperature, source of water, visible pest sign. Nice, that's an additional point here. So good effort. And in fact, deductive approach is always a top-down reasoning that we get into in a research. So you need to have an overall perspective beginning from vertical up, then down in the form of reasoning in a deductive study. So when you do a deductive study, in fact, you can have a theory established, of course. You can start with the theory as the first step in the deductive approach. So it's always good to start with the theory. And if your theory, let's say some of you all, I think most of you all, you have, gone with a theory that a plant is wilting, probably different reasons, but mostly I could see they do not get sufficient water, like even Michael's conclusion and source of water and Thomas' chat. Most of you all have gone with that particular theory. So start with a theory. Now in this case, since most of your response are on that base, so I'm going to mention a theory. That plants wilt when they don't get enough water. So I'm going to put that as my theory. Now, step 2, since I've formed a theory, I'm going to form a hypothesis to this theory. So my hypothesis would say if we water the plants properly, I could say, let's say sufficiently, there's chance that they will recover. Okay. So they will recover. So that's going to be my hypothesis. Now I start my study with a theory. I form a hypothesis stating that if there's a sufficient supply of water to that plant or those plants, then they will recover. Now, just as my hypothesis, which means it's part of my assumption, I need to prove and disprove it. So how can I do it? I'm going to test with data to prove or disprove it. So what sort of data? I'm going to pick it up. So technically, the data is going to be through my actions, right? So let's say there are 10 plants. I'm going to pick 5 plants, okay? And I will water them daily as part of the study. And I'm going to pick the other 5 plants and not water sufficiently. I'm just going to see the development. Okay. So this, water them daily, which is going to be sufficient amount of water, which is required for plant. And also, I'm going to use something called this. Jonas has mentioned soil test. Yes, soil condition, soil test. That's very important, especially when people get into gardening. You guys must know this, of course. So we do a soil moisture reading. You know, too much of water in a soil also can lead to a lot of bacterial, composition on the first layer of the soil as well. It gets soaked much, and that process will lead to bacterial composition because it's moist every time. And if there's no sufficient sunlight, they compose a lot of bacteria there as well. So soil moisture reading, I'm going to undertake that and get on both the plants for soil moisture reading as well. So once this is done, I'm going to observe the results. So technically, the results are going to be a little varied because of the bifurcation of my tests on the basis of the plant. So plants with low soil moisture are actually wilting. If this is the output I'm going to get over the period of time, and also plants with adequate water are healthy. So over a period of time, I identify, so these are sufficient water, which is healthy, and these are wilting because not sufficient, low amount of water, very minimal amount of water, probably in drops. I'm just watering them, assuming that. Okay. And conclusion. How do I conclude this? So I have created a hypothesis here. So I have to conclude very well, stating that the hypothesis is supported in this case. And I conclude that lack of water caused wilting because a study was centric to this hypothesis alone. Right? So I'm concluding in proving or disproving this hypothesis. So what I confirm through my conclusion is important. So what I create in the form of theory, I confirm that the plants will, due to insufficient water. Okay, so how do you do a deductive study? First and foremost, you start with the theory, and then you move on to forming hypothesis, and then you test the data. So testing the data is what we do in a quantitative study. Okay, and then I confirm or refute the theory depending on my approach here. Okay, so this follows the process for my quantitative deductive study. When I do an inductive study, now this slightly varies in the case of an inductive study. I'm just going to duplicate the slide and put it as inductive. Now, what happens in an inductive study? In deductive, I told you it is top and down, the vertical down reasoning. In inductive, it is bottom-up reasoning. So your reasoning in inductive should always be bottom-up approach. Now, how do you undertake this bottom-up approach? We start with observation. Unlike theory, we start with the observation. And the observation can be multiple in an inductive study. Here, I came up with a theory in deductive, stating the plants will when they don't get enough water. But in inductive, I start with an different observation. My observations can be multitude, and first I can tell plants wilt when they don't get water, and I can also, all my observations, plants in shaded areas or wilting, which means there's no sufficient sunlight, and soil moisture sometimes, if you get to know, they vary. Okay, so although you have adequate water put forth, they vary. And Jonas, temperature, yes, extreme temperature, again, may be a condition for my plants to wilt. And some of the leaves, they start, like someone said, they turn yellow or they start showing spots on the leaves, right? So leaves turn yellow or some spots are observed. So these could be my observations. And then I don't form a hypothesis here. Rather, what I do, I look for patterns in my study. So what patterns I look for is dependent highly on my observation on all these phenomena. So these phenomena are going to help me to closely look for pattern. And then through my observation, I start with an observation. So through my observation, what I do, I conclude on a limited factor that, let's say, most of the plants in shaded areas are wilting and the soil moisture varies. Okay, so which means the soil moisture is generally fine, so water may not be the issue. My observations may talk about this, right? So plants in shaded area are wilting. So when I look for patterns, I highlight this as the most evident because of the observations over a period of my study. So someone mentioned on time, knowledge. That's one of the major things. Yes, we use a time frame in such studies. And I look for the pattern, and then most wilting plants are in shaded areas. So which means I'm going to now formulate theory. So look for patterns. When I look for patterns, I identified this is explicitly identified as one of the factor, and I'm formulating the theory stating that due to lack of sunlight, this is causing the plants to wilt. Let's say lack of sunlight is causing the plants to wilt. I'm formulating a theory. Then the next step, I'm going to suggest further testing. Okay, so I'm going to suggest further testing. So I'm going to move shaded plants to sunlight to observe and see if they recover. So shaded plants to be moved to sunlight. I'm doing this to see if they recover over a period of time. And then finally, we're going to look on the inductive summary. So how am I going to pick the entire 1 to 4 points on my inductive summary? I'm going to start with observation as my first thing. And then I'm finding the patterns as my second thing. And then I'm forming the theory. And last, I plan to test my study. Okay, so deductive, start with a general theory, then test it. Induction, start with an observation, then build a theory. These are the major things which needs to be involved as part of your study as well. So hypothesis, not mandatory, but ensure that if you build, it's good. And don't trouble your supervisors, because generally sometimes it so happens some of them, they wouldn't insist because there's no incision from the university. But if you really are an enthusiastic researcher, build one. I would encourage one, at least people under my supervision. So it's always good for a researcher to probe on certain aspects and decide how concepts, variables are measured. That's what we did here. Soil moisture testing and water, we did that in deductive. We need to collect the data, test hypothesis. And when you test hypothesis for respondents, we do that statistically as well. Reject null hypothesis. If you have the output created as part of a study, then in that case, you can reject the null hypothesis as well. And then you confirm modifying the theory based on the output or based on the data that you have collected as well. That's important. And another thing which I want to highlight is the research strategy choices. Your research strategy choices really important, and what sort of strategy you pick again is going to be part of your Sunday's research onion as well. Now, strategy is just like most of you all are working in organization. Without strategy, you cannot take things forward, right? So you need to have that visionistic approach and the direction as well. So a research strategy will help you in developing an overall plan and that particular direction for which you as a researcher can conduct your dissertation in an appropriate way as well. So the strategy will help you to determine how you will approach your research objective, your steps, and in what way you'll take the sources of your study in order to gather the information and analyze the information as well. So essentially, the roadmap is your research strategy. So strategy is going to be something long, even in organizations, we say strategic plan. So this strategic plan is going to be for 3 years or 5 years, and it's long term. So your dissertation is going to be for 5 to 6 months. It's long term. So for you to create that roadmap, research strategy is important. So we're going to look into 2 strategies here. One is quantitative and the other one is qualitative. So by now you have an idea of deductive and inductive, and what comes beneath deductive is quantitative, what comes beneath inductive is qualitative. So in the first place, the strategy for a quantitative method is what I'm going to give you an understanding on. So quantitative study, for you people, you can use survey precisely for the data collection, again, which goes in the form of the questionnaire. Generally, we insist students to create the questions through Google Form because the forms are easily created, and most of you all have the accounts where the forms can be created easily. So as simple as your Google form will get it right. I've seen some of them using SurveyMonkey. So there are other tools, but Google form is preferable because the data, once collected, you can convert and export it to Excel easily. Then your statistical analysis becomes easy. And your, again, data which is collected, there are 2 ways we analyze. One is descriptive, the other one is inferential statistics. And university again insists on inferential statistics than descriptive statistics. Now, what is inferential statistics? We use very colloquial statistical methods like your regression, correlation, z-test, ANOVA, which is analysis of variance. So we use things like this. Again, you can't pick and choose randomly. Okay, I'm going to do a regression test. No, it doesn't apply that way. So again, your variables come into the picture, and we know based on which research question, what sort of test needs to be undertaken and what sort of variables needs to be looked into. And we alert you as a student which test to be undertaken for what sort of respondents and the data collection method as well. So quantitative is purely numerical, and your humongous 100, 120, whatever data you collect should be quantified using inferential statistics only. So the method in which you can collect the data, the first one is survey. So survey and research method is where set of questions is distributed to selected group, that is your sample, selected group of people or sample who are going to be part of your study, who are actually the respondents for your study. So you're going to collect data from them about their opinions, behaviors, attitudes, characteristics, what is based on your research questions. The survey questions are being created. So we generally insist on an average, one objective, have 4 questions for your survey. So 3 objectives are mandatory as part of your study, which means on an average, at least have 12 questions part of your survey. Beyond that is excellent, but do not get too exhaustive on your questionnaire, because the more lengthy it is, the more it will confuse people and they lose interest and they wouldn't give you appropriate responses. So very accurately, the requisite is 4 questions, 4 objective. You can expand beyond that, but do not get it too exhaustive. Limit it to your objective, limit it to your research questions, and then prepare the survey questions. So you can have close-ended questions where predefined options are being given. Sometimes you'll get questions, right? How satisfied are you with the service provided in a restaurant? So when you look at that, very satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. So it's kind of a close-ended question that you ask. Sometimes it can be open-ended as well, but limit open-ended because you have an inferential statistics here. So open-ended question, as a respondent, you will answer, you'll get the answers in their own words, right? So if I may have to continue the same pattern of question, what improvements would you suggest in our restaurant for the services to get better? So I keep it as open-ended, which means I still give an option for people to describe on improvement, scope of suggestions, right? So it can happen, but try to limit in your survey as much as you can, because there are a large number of respondents, so you can't find time to sit and analyze. As much as you keep close-ended, relevant to your objectives and research questions, that would do great wonders for you. Quantitative experiments as well we conduct, but nothing at your business management level. This will hold good. So most of the researchers, they get one or more variables to observe the effect, cause and effect relationship. That's how we see dependent and independent variable. And they will look into the controlling factors in comparison to other factors of these variables, that they get it into the experiment. So fundamental cause and effect relationship, people doing the study can have experiment as part of their study as well. So for us, we do not get into that at this point of time. So survey holds good for your study. And then observation can also be part of your study. Again, due to time constraints, researchers, we mention not to get into that level, but this also can be quantified by your recording behaviors of the event, or the pattern of the natural calamities, controlled environment. And also you can pick and choose the focus groups on observation as well. So a controlled observation can be undertaken. So you will be controlling on the variables, right? So you can check on response time of kids, especially when they are in different noise levels. You can have 4 different rooms and each and every kid in the room, and the volume, the decibels, the more you increase the noise levels, how they react and respond to your commands. So different thing on observations, you can take it forward as well. And qualitative method, so confined to quantitative, hold good for survey. And when it comes to qualitative, we have these many factors on the strategy application as part of your research strategy. So interview, again, is the most common, which most of the business management students follow the pattern of the interview as well. So which we insist the learners to pick as part of the qualitative study. So here you have your human experience, behaviors, social phenomena, which gets into an in-depth understanding, then numerically measuring the output. So interviews will be undertaken. More open-ended question comes into the picture, which is why you give the liberty to the respondents in your interview. Direct one-on-one conversation is what we appreciate. And for your research purpose during a dissertation, please have a transcription or the data recorded. So we will verify, because we have quality audits undertaken by the university. So we're definitely going to verify to see your interview responses, because survey generally, for students, when they collect data, the Google Forms, they act as a backup for the data collected. So 100 or 150 respondents, whatever the data they collect, we ask them to export, Google export through Excel. And then we run it through SPSS. Some of the faculties, they may run it through Excel itself. But for interview, people say, oh, I failed to record, I haven't taken. Please do not have any excuses. Because during the audit, we ensure to check, at least on a random basis, the data that these qualitative researchers have collected. So if you choose qualitative, please have the transcripts ready. Yeah, Jonas.
I have a question, ma'am. Uh, just
ahead,
in case,
please.
if you are choosing a qualitative method, when it
Mm.
comes to interview, do we have to shoot a video, uh, or we have to prepare questions, and then probably we will be asking uh, uh, to fill it and give it back? How usually it's required as per the academic?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. And let me give the bifurcation on how the data collection can happen in an interview. First, face-to-face, well and good. Shooting an interview, no, it's a strict no-no, because see, sometimes when Thomas was also trying to mention, I want business owners to interview, they may not reveal their identity, or they may not be comfortable you shooting the entire interview as a part of documentation. Rather, we want even the respondents, for that matter. This is for all the attention of qualitative data collectors. Even when you mention in a qualitative study, the analysis, especially thematic analysis, when you do, let's say you collected data from me, okay? We wouldn't permit using the name of the respondents. Again, it is confined to ethical clearance. So my name shouldn't be as part of your study, but you can code me as respondent 1. And let's say, Jonas, your second respondent is probably, I would pick who's reflected on my Mariana. Your second respondent is Mariana, and you interviewed Mariana. You cannot have Mariana's name. You can code it as respondent 2, respondent 3, respondent 4. So no names, no pulling in names. Now, coming back to your question on video, no. It's going to be a strict no. But how do I reveal it? You can have an audio tape, and beyond that, you need not go physically to their office or a site to get. You can record it on Teams. You can record it on Zoom. Online platform is still fine. You can have that backup as a recording only if they wish to. If not, they can switch off the cam and then respond to you as well. But what we're looking mostly is the transcription from the respondent in your side. That's the first thing. Second thing, questions. You had mentioned, can we prepare the questionnaire where we can give it to them ticking, giving back? No, that does not qualify for a qualitative study. Rather, create a questionnaire, a checklist, get the approval from a supervisor, have those set of questions as part of your interview, qualitative study. See, sometimes people do it on phone call as well. We still say, okay, but we need a transcription, at least a record to say, this is a response, this is the analysis, right? So have that in place. And end of the audit, we're going to ask you, it's going to be on a random basis. It's not like I'm going to come to Jonas and ask, okay, where are the records? Which is why you need to get the questionnaire approved by the supervisor. And secondly, your data analysis, that is your fourth chapter, data collection and analysis. See, the third chapter is methodology. That's why your questionnaire, everything should be done, get the ethical clearance, then the work is independent. After third chapter, you're going to get into data collection thoroughly. So you have ample of time there given. And after that, in fourth chapter, you're going to collate the data and put it into picture. So it's when we look into the data, at least a few well-versed researchers, we understand that this data is foolproof or this data is through generative AI. So which is why sometimes we cross-check. We ask, please provide me the data collected or whatever transcription you have. So online is still fine. You can have Google Meet or Zoom Meet or Teams Meet, send it across to them, 10, 15 minutes, finish it. So that you have a record, transcription, and again, AI generative narratives on minutes you get. It's easy for you to collate it and then do the analysis as well. But
And what
don't
if
give them the set of questions and make them tick face to face. No, that doesn't work.
what if you are doing interview face to face?
It's still fine. Get them to sign on the ethical clearance. That's okay.
Okay.
Just flip it, give their name, get the sign. That is okay. We can just have that so that we have a proof of record if you did a face-to-face. See, sometimes it may be your very own colleague in the organization, so you may feel comfortable, having a chat face-to-face. It's still fine. As long as we get the responses to the question, again, you can have these questions and you can also take note. That is important. So probably you can have a note taker or a Word document for every interview's responses and then start analyzing and taking the notes. So create a table of your own for every question so that your themes gets simplified. If not, let's say someone would speak for 20 minutes and the other responder would talk for more than an hour. So you have to define limits to them when it comes to interview. Okay.
Oh, yeah, much clearer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. Michael, Teams has an initial as per the screen. Can we, if approved, use these instead of respondent one? Yeah, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I like the first name or second name that depicts, that's fine as well. Not necessary respondent 1, 2. Even that is fine. As long as there is no explicit, visibility of the respondent out there, which we refrain. And sometimes it gets too critical on the ethical clearance, Michael. Yeah, so the thumbs up there. Fine. Great. So interviews, what predominantly we use, and focus group, like you just saw a set of example on the new product launch. Focus groups are precisely the guided discussion with small group of participants that we try to explore opinions, perception, or experience on a particular topic. So typically in a focus group, we pick 6 participants on a minimum, which can range up to 12 as well. So this facilitated by a guided person on the conversation on the open-ended question and focus group. And grounded theory, again, grounded theory is quite systematic methodology which we use in a qualitative research. So the goal here is to generate theory from the data rather than you start with the hypothesis. So as a researcher in a grounded theory, I may collect, analyze data simultaneously to discover the patterns and the concepts and relationship here. So in your interview or observations, grounded theory holds good. So it becomes very easy for you to categorize on themes, compare the data, refine the categories as well on the grounded theory. And narrative analysis is something where it goes on the study to the extent of people telling their stories, telling their experiences about the study on which you are conducting your analysis as well. So you have to make sense on what they're depicting when it comes to their experience as well. So have a very structured content. The context of narratives may differ because it's their experience. Each one may have different experiences. So collective narratives need to be documented well. So you need to analyze how the story is told. So people may not use sequence, language. The perspectives are going to be different. So your interpretation and a narrative analysis is important because you are going to provide an underlying meaning and identity for a particular responder's response as well. So that's important in a narrative analysis. Thomas raises a question. Please clarify on the questionnaires. Can these be used as evidence? You have to. Yes. So the questionnaire, is it going to be as part of quantitative, qualitative, doesn't matter for both the study. I mean, as an individual, you're subject to do only one, but for inductive and deductive, you have to have the questionnaire as part of your annexure. Okay, so your research results, definitely, if it's a quantitative, you're going to run through all your data sets. And it's qualitative, you need to provide some proof of evidence on the respondency, and narratives will give us an idea if you did really a data collection or it is foolproof and not just using a generative AI content as well. So these questionnaires needs to be added towards the annexures. But for quantitative, we do not ask the survey forms, but just the data output is important. A data output will suffice for a quantitative. We don't want, let's say, 100 questionnaires. If you're getting a physical copy, distributing, don't do that. I mean, we are way too past all this concept of materialization. We moved into dematerialization. So use the forms. Every data you get it, export to Excel. So your data sets are fine. But the questionnaires, a prototype of your questionnaire, one sample, can be part of the annexure, which is important. It's mandatory that you produce that. And at the ethical clearance stage, your supervisor needs to sign the form along with the questionnaire. Okay, hope that clarifies. Thomas? All right. So I'm going to wind up the session now. We'll catch up on Saturday, where I'm going to visit the steps in the Sanders Research Onion so that you're going to use that as part of your proposal and the dissertation as well. So by now, quantitative, qualitative, research strategy, philosophy, you have an idea, including time horizon. So all these things put together, we're going to create one for your study. Okay, so that's going to be the next step. Meanwhile, I'm going to share that Word document. I don't know if I have access here. No, it doesn't appear on my chat to attach any files for now. Nah. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to share it via email so that you have a copy of your topic, which is reframed into a title now. So please ensure to go through. People have been submitted so far. Ensure to fill in that outline MPM form. If not, send an email to me. I'm just going to get you there and at least get your topic convert it into a title. And for the rest of you all, based on the document and the color coding, if it's green, please go ahead, restructure your objective and questions. Once again, we'll revisit to see if you're aligning towards the study. And next class, after Sunday's research onion is explained, you're going to, in class, prepare and peel the onion for us layer to layer on 5 steps. Okay, so until then, take care. I'll meet on Saturday. Have a pleasant evening and pleasant night. See you all. Good night.